I hate my mother for ruining so many people's lives. I didn't even know why she did it. What gave her the right to play God with people? And I hate her for having me be the one that found my dad, just like her for having Bree found me. I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It's so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time?
What happens when the person you trust most, your wife, your mother, is quietly plotting your death? Stacey Castor was known as a hardworking woman, a grieving widow, and a loving mother. But in reality, she was orchestrating a series of murders so cold and calculated, they stunned even seasoned detectives. Her weapon of choice wasn't a gun or a knife. It was antifreeze, tasteless, deadly, and nearly undetectable. With each sip she served, another life slipped away. And when her web of lies began to unravel, she turned on the one person who still believed in her own daughter. Stick around as we unpack how a suburban mother used poison to eliminate the men in her life, rewrite their deaths as suicides, and almost got away with framing her own child for murder. Stacey Ruth Castor grew up in a quiet suburb outside Syracuse, New York. Her early years were uneventful, even ordinary. She married young, fell in love with a man named Michael Wallace, and together they built what looked like a simple, working-class life. 2 daughters, Ashley and Bree, a modest home, steady jobs. Stacey worked dispatch in an ambulance company, while Michael handled night shifts as a mechanic. But behind the illusion of normalcy, things were tense. Financial strain and long hours weighed heavily on the marriage. And while Michael doted on their youngest, Bree, Stacey clung to Ashley, treating her like a confidant, even as a child. The dynamic was unbalanced, almost possessive. Control, for Stacey, was everything. In late 1999, Michael Wallace suddenly began to fall ill. He grew lethargic, disoriented, and frequently complained of dizziness and nausea. The symptoms baffled doctors. No one could figure out what was wrong. Then, just after Christmas, he collapsed and died at home. He was only 38. Stacey told everyone he had heart problems. When the family begged for an autopsy, she refused. His body was buried quickly, and life moved on. She collected the life insurance payout and slipped quietly into widowhood. No one suspected that the man they had just buried hadn't died from natural causes, but from deliberate poisoning. It didn't take long for Stacey to find a new partner. Within a year, she was dating David Castor, the owner of the HVAC company where she worked. David was older, successful, and seemed like a stabilizing force for Stacey and her daughters. The two married in 2003, but soon after, the same cracks began to show. Stacey complained that David was controlling. Friends noticed she seemed restless. What they didn't know was that Stacey had already made up her mind. David, like Michael, was disposable. On August 22, 2005, Stacey called 911. She told dispatchers that David had locked himself in the bedroom after an argument and wasn't responding. When deputies arrived and forced open the door, they found David dead, naked, alone, slumped over the bed. A glass with a strange green liquid sat nearby, along with a nearly empty bottle of antifreeze. The scene looked like a suicide, messy, confusing, but just believable enough. Stacey told police David had been depressed, that he drank too much, that he'd locked himself away and taken his own life. But things didn't add up. The glass had no fingerprints. The turkey baster found in the kitchen had traces of antifreeze and Stacey's DNA, and David's stomach contents suggested he hadn't swallowed the poison on his own. He'd been force-fed. Then came the suicide note, typed, robotic, and full of misspelled words, including the word antifreeze, written as anti-free, a misspelling Stacey would accidentally replicate later during questioning. Detectives began to take a closer look at her. That's when everything began to unravel. Suspicious investigators started digging into Stacey's past. They took another look at Michael Wallace's death and exhumed his body 5 years after his burial. What they found confirmed their worst fears. Michael hadn't died of a heart condition. His organs showed the same deadly signs: calcium oxalate crystals caused by ethylene glycol poisoning. Stacey had poisoned both of her husbands the same way, years apart. But rather than panic, she did something even colder. If this case is as disturbing to you as it sounds, take a second to like this video. It really helps the channel out. She turned to the one person who still trusted her own daughter, and tried to frame her for everything. Ashley Wallace was 17 when police approached her about her father's death. Investigators told her that Michael Wallace may not have died of natural causes and that they suspected foul play. Ashley, overwhelmed and devastated, confided everything to her mother. Stacey pretended to be supportive. She comforted her daughter. Then she began to prepare her next drink. Over the course of 2 days, Stacey handed Ashley several drinks, laced with sleeping pills and crushed medication. She told her daughter to calm down and get some rest. Ashley fell into a deep, drugged sleep. Stacey returned with a second dose, stronger this time. Ashley slipped into unconsciousness. Her breathing slowed. Stacey placed a typewritten suicide note next to her bed. In it, Ashley confessed to killing both Michael Wallace and David Castor. The note was riddled with the same spelling errors, including one that matched Stacey's earlier mistake: anti-free. The plan was simple: make it look like Ashley had cracked under guilt and taken her own life. But Ashley didn't die. Stacey's second dose wasn't enough. A phone call from a friend and a lucky response time saved Ashley's life. She was rushed to the hospital and stabilized. When she woke up, groggy but coherent, she told police everything. She had never written a suicide note. She had no idea what was in the drinks, and she certainly hadn't murdered anyone. By this point, the evidence was overwhelming. Police had Stacey's DNA on the turkey baster. They had the forged suicide note. They had the antifreeze residue and the toxicology reports. Most damning of all, they had Ashley alive and willing to testify. In 2007, Stacey Castor was arrested. She was charged with second-degree murder for David's death, attempted murder for trying to kill Ashley, and forging David's will in an attempt to collect his assets. The trial in 2009 was explosive. The prosecution painted Stacey as a calculating killer who used her position as a grieving widow to mask her crimes. They showed how she forged a narrative, used poison to avoid detection, and targeted her own daughter to cover her tracks. Stacey sat in court with no emotion, denying everything. Ashley, composed and strong, took the stand against her mother. It was one of the most powerful moments of the trial. She stared down the woman who had tried to kill her, who had murdered her father and stepfather, and told the jury exactly what had happened. Her testimony sealed the case. Stacey Castor was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 51 years to life in prison. Effectively, a life sentence. She died behind bars in 2016 of a heart attack. She never admitted guilt, never showed remorse. She went to her grave, maintaining her innocence, even as the bodies piled up and the truth surrounded her. What made this case so disturbing wasn't just the use of poison. It was the betrayal, the slow, deliberate way Stacey destroyed the people closest to her. She wasn't impulsive. She was methodical. She smiled through funerals. She comforted her daughters while planning their deaths. She gave interviews, crying for cameras, while hiding in plain sight. And when she ran out of husbands to kill, she turned to her child. What kind of mind chooses poison over conversation, murder over divorce, and betrayal over love? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this deep dive compelling, subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories.